Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's show, this being the Concealed Carry Podcast. Today, we are talking about industry news and gear reviews. So this is our news and reviews episode. I got Matthew Maruster with me today.
You do?
Going to be a great time. So I have no idea what he's reviewing. Well, I kind of think I know, but I haven't looked at the outline that far down to see what he put.
It'll be a surprise. I know what you're reviewing.
Yeah, I wrote it down in the notes. So it's gonna be great episode here today, guys. We got a lot of great news stories to cover. Talking about some, well, even though this is not a legislative news episode, there's gonna be a couple things that I thought they were noteworthy enough and recent, news worthy enough to be in today's episode. Talking about ammo shortages. That's no surprise. That is nothing new. But for some of you listening or viewing, it might be the first you're hearing of, as far as like hearing some of the specifics of some of this stuff, which is pretty fascinating to see just what's going on in the ammunition world. Talk about some court stuff, some Supreme Court stuff. Talk about some gun ownership numbers. Some really surprising numbers in terms of guns that are owned by Americans and the quantity of some of those guns, some of those styles of those guns. Yeah. And why that's relevant, actually. So it'll be good stuff. Plus, we have a story I know that Matthew's so excited to talk about, which involves a security guard.
Man.
Where was that? Oklahoma or something?
Yeah, you got me fired up with that one.
Nebraska. Yeah, that's a fun one. So we'll talk about that. So, hey, Ryan, thanks for watching your first time here on a Wednesday. That is awesome. And Brian, dude, I am looking forward to tomorrow as well. So it'll be a good one. I know that's an inside thing for everybody else. They're like, what are you guys talking about? What's tomorrow? Well, I'll actually explain part of that in the sponsor portion of the episode when we kick it off here. Should we kick it off?
Let's do it.
All right. In 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, episode number 459. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network. I am your host, Riley Bowman, joined today by Mr. Producer Extraordinaire, Marine, Jarhead, awesome dude.
What's up,
him.
man?
We accept him. We overlook his faults.
Yes, many of them, many faults.
It's my awesome friend, Matthew Maruster.
Glad to be
do the
here.
Episode with you today, bro.
Yeah, me too, man. I get the night spot, so I'm happy.
Keeping you away from your family.
It's all good.
I'm a mean person.
Slave driver here.
So, guys, looking forward to today's episode. This is our industry news and gear reviews episode. We are going to be talking about a bunch of different industry news stories, and then Matthew and I each feature a couple of gear review or gear reviews at the end. We're also going to be talking about a newly announced product that will probably be featured in a gear review at some point in the hopefully relatively near future. Looking forward to talking about that. A new product release from a favorite company of mine. But today's episode is brought to you by, first, CCW Safe. CCWSafe.com is the place to go to learn more about CCW Safe and its coverage and what they have to offer for all of you. It should be noted that Guardian Nation members get, I think, 15 or 20% off. I always forget the numbers.
I think it's 15. I'm not sure either. Now you got me questioning it.
Maybe I'll see if I can dig that up. Either way, it's a substantial discount off of a fantastic membership at CCW Safe. It's valid towards the Defender plan or the Ultimate plan, or if you're a law enforcement or military individual, there's the Protector plan, I think is the one that's available for you as well. Either way, you save big if you are a Guardian Nation member as well. So today's other sponsor of the podcast is Guardian Nation. GuardianNation.com is the place to learn more about becoming a member of the nation. And those two things collide in a big way tomorrow. Tomorrow evening, in fact, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, I'll have to get used to the fact that for the first time ever, I think, I'll be doing a Guardian Nation live broadcast in a different time zone. I've almost always done those from the home base here in Colorado. I think I participated in one or two from Utah or Idaho once upon a time, but those are in the same time zone. So tomorrow, Jacob and I are actually going to be in Oklahoma City at CCW Safe headquarters. And we're going to be doing Guardian Nation Live, which is a members-only live video broadcast. We're going to be doing that live from CCW Safe headquarters tomorrow with our special guest, Gary Eastridge, who is one of the big dogs over there at CCW Safe. And Gary is a retired law enforcement professional and investigator. He spent a lot of his career investigating homicides and other serious crimes. So I promise you, for those of you Guardian Nation members, you will not want to miss tomorrow evening's GN live broadcast. And if you're not a GN member, that's the point of us mentioning it. GuardianNation.com to get signed up. And I'll tell you what, I will just throw out there, if you haven't heard it before, we have a 14-day free trial. All right. So easy, low barrier to get over here. Okay. Go to concealedcarry.com/14-day. And that is written out as 14DAY. Concealedcarry.com/14DAY, 14-day. And that'll immediately add to your shopping cart a 14-day free trial of Guardian Nation. And if you do that by tomorrow evening, you'll actually have access almost immediately. You'll be able to participate in tomorrow's live broadcast. And I'm pretty confident after you are involved in that and you see everything else that Guardian Nation membership has to offer, that you'll probably want to stick around as a member. But feel free, check it out. And don't miss the special live broadcast with Gary Eastridge from CCW Safe headquarters in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. So, yeah, super excited. And we're super excited to be doing that with our partners there at CCW Safe. And we're proud to be joined up with them as our sponsor of today's podcast. So that's all I had to say about that. Let's get into the news. First up, there's an article from Newsweek, newsweek.com, and this is titled, "Despite Pandemic Lockdowns, Mass Shootings Are 35% Higher Than 2019, and the Year's Not Even Over." Matthew, I know that you're the one that brought this article to my attention. So you know what the gist is with this. Why don't you give us a rundown of what this Newsweek article is all about and maybe where some of its shortcomings are as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, okay. So obviously we're talking about lockdowns. Not a lot of people are at school, not as many people at school, at offices, going to outdoor events and things like that, right? Businesses are, a lot of people are working from home. So you would think statistically, if you're going to say, our typical mass shootings would be down. However, it's not that simple, right? Because we know that mass shootings aren't just a byproduct of people being in a location, right? There's tons of other factors that go into it. Well, this article goes in and it says it takes statistics from the Gun Violence Archive. And they looked at mass shootings, and what they consider a mass shooting is, it's basically open to interpretation for whatever. There's no real, so they even go into it. It says the Gun Violence Archive. This is in the article that's quoting the evidence or the numbers from Gun Violence Archive. Gun Violence Archive does not exclude, set apart, caveat, or differentiate victims based upon the circumstances in which they were shot, including defensive gun use, So their mass shootings data is not limited to the often widely publicized incidents that occur in public. So they're including incidents where we had a lot of riots, right, or demonstrations, whatever you want to call them, right, gatherings of violent people, whatever politically correct term you want to use. Mm-hmm. And there were shootings where people were shot and injured, right? And so these are being lumped in as mass shootings. I guess they're mass shootings. And these aren't even instances where people died. We typically think of a mass shooting like, innocent people just being mowed down. And they're talking about, a gangbanger comes and shoots up another gangbanger party or something like that, right? And so I'm not saying these people aren't important, right? I'm just saying that the statistics are very skewed. And if you think about it, they're trying to equate, somehow that because we're not out and about, that shootings would go down. But I mean, violent people are violent regardless. And when you cram them into a house and not let them leave and not take away freedoms and all this other stuff, people are getting violent. People are angry, and you're basically throwing gasoline on a fire that's right there. So I don't know why Newsweek, which is typically, you would hope that they were kind of be more of a reputable news site, but they're basically taking statistics that are widely taking it and construing it and twisting it into something that it's not supportive of. And so, yes, there probably are more shootings, potentially. Who knows? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But it's certainly not like a crazy amount of mass shootings because they're just lumping a whole bunch of stuff in there. So it's a long-winded way of saying this article is based off of bogus information, or not bogus information, but information that's sort of worthless.
Yeah. Yep. That's a pretty good summary, dude. I mean, really, here's the thing. So the common definition of a mass shooting, and this was noted in the article, right? You touched on this, being a shooting incident. Sorry, I scrolled away from it. As four or more people shot and or killed in a single incident at the same general time and location, but not including the shooter. What I have noticed in a lot of the news stories that I have followed throughout the course of this year is there's been quite an uptick, I believe, in domestically inspired mass shooting events where you've had a lot of people holed up at home and not going anywhere, and tensions run high, emotions, all that stuff. Psychologically, there's some challenges for people. And not the usual outlets, maybe for some people to relieve stress and that kind of thing as well. And so you add that all up, and I mean, there's even examples in this article itself about shootings that very much were something that occurred at somebody's home. Mm-hmm. We don't always know all the motivations behind some of those, but it's clear that some of those have been, I think, a little more common this year. And just by nature of there being, at least 4 people in a household that are shot, well, boom, there you go. It lands on the mass shooting database, if you will, according to Gun Violence Archive, which I should have done a little of this research beforehand, but I didn't have the time to do so. And I was doing a little digging into who is the gunviolencearchive.org. And I don't have all the answers yet, but let's just say I am pretty certain their funding is coming from entities that have ties to gun control organizations. Insert here, Everytown. Anyway, all right, which funds a lot of things, including The Trace and other websites that try to come across as being open and fair and unbiased, but there's a subtle hidden agenda, even though they won't tell you that. All right.
I got one more thing to add in here.
Yeah, sure.
So in case you thought that I was the listeners, because you're probably not looking at the article right now. In case you thought I was kind of being a little bit bombastic about these articles not presenting the data correctly. I just want to tell you, read verbatim from a couple sentences here. The U.S. has seen up to 7 people killed in at least 3 mass shootings in 2020, which would say, wow, this is crazy. Up to 7 people killed. These are the 2 that they highlight. In March, Alabama emergency crews said they found 7 adults dead inside of some Villermo Springs home, which had been set alight, according to WTOC. Crews reported they found 7 adults. They ruled out domestic violence. They don't know what caused it, but it wasn't, when we're thinking about mass shootings, we're not thinking about some sort of compound where 7 people are shot and, the details are kind of sketchy. The next one in September, 7 people were killed in a marijuana factory massacre in California. I'm not saying these people are not worthwhile and, it's okay if they're shot and killed. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying they're presenting the data as if, tying it into the mass shooting thought of schools and churches and, concerts, in the highest ones, the most notable ones that they even pull from in the article are not those typical ones that you would think of. So,
yeah. Well, like back to that one that occurred at a home. Again, they say that investigators rule out domestic violence, but it doesn't really matter because this is very clearly a targeted massacre of people.
Right.
Whether it's something that occurred within that household or something outside the household, but it's clear that the people in that household were the target. Mm-hmm. It's very non-typical of what we generally associate with mass shootings. All right, let's move on now to this article. This is on foxbusiness.com. And this says here, Vista Outdoors reports ammunition backlog of over $1 billion. That is one with a B, $1 billion. And according to CEO Chris Metz, Vista Outdoors CEO, he says we currently have over a year's worth of orders for ammunition.
It's crazy.
It really is. I don't even know how to calculate that. That is an insane number of rounds. So it's hard to classify all of this, but what this is going to be is a lot of orders from distributors, orders from dealers, also some private party orders too. I mean, like you can go right to Federal's website. Federal would be the biggest brand that Vista Outdoors represents, or owns as far as ammunition production. And of course, they recently added Remington to that brand as well. But you can go to the website and buy ammo directly from them, right? They're not doing back orders for those types of sales, but in talking with some of the industry folks that I know, dealers and wholesalers and such, they have huge orders on the books, just sitting, waiting to be fulfilled by companies like Vista Outdoors. Vista Outdoors, again, owns and represents Federal, CCI, Spear, now Remington, as I noted a moment ago, and we covered that in recent industry news as well, like last episode, I think, and Blazer Brass, which is CCI essentially. So anyway, also interesting things to note in this article, an estimated 1.9 million firearms were sold in October this year, 65% more than the same month in 2019.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. So tons of guns being bought, tons of ammo being bought, tons of ammo being ordered. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. These are crazy times we're in for sure.
Yeah. What I pulled out of this after I was like, picked up my jaw off the floor, I was saying, this just means that anybody who is holding out on some hope that the ammo would come back to some sort of realistic price and quantities at your stores and stuff is just, it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. All right. Let's move on to. Oh, come on. It's being just a little slow to respond to me here, the computer. I think I just accidentally closed 2 tabs. Why don't you give us the next story? I'll have to get it opened back up.
This is the NRA agrees to a $2.5 million fine, 5-year ban insurance ban in New York.
Yeah. So we know that the NRA a couple years ago came out with their Carry Guard insurance program, right? And they sold insurance all over the country. But in New York, in a few other states, they got themselves. Of course, Carry Guard is now basically defunct; like it's gone. You can't get new memberships with Carry Guard. I believe there's still some memberships that are active that were essentially grandfathered in a few states, but I don't even know for sure on that. And why would you go with a program or stick with a program that is
Right.
basically gone at this point? I have no idea. Of course, we would recommend CCW Safe. But anyway, they're under some serious heat in New York State. In fact, New York City, which is where the NRA is remarkably based. The NRA has been based in New York for, I think, all of its history. And, they're under essentially an investigation of sorts by the state attorney general, and the governor's putting some heat on them as well. Meanwhile, specifically on the Carry Guard thing, they sold these Carry Guard memberships, and New York says that they were selling the equivalent of insurance and doing so without a license to do that. So that's the big beef here, and so thus the settlement in essence here, that's what this equates to, is essentially a settlement, right? Working back and forth with the state, and the state says, okay, fine, here we go. You want to be settled and done with this? Here's the agreement. You pay $2.5 million of a fine, and you have to agree to not do any insurance related business for 5 years. And that's even if NRA does go and pursue obtaining a lawful insurance license to offer insurance products in the state, which, by the way, pretty sure wouldn't happen. It wouldn't surprise me if New York State was just like, nope, not doing that. Also, I don't think the NRA is, like I said, I'm pretty sure they have ditched the idea of Carry Guard, at least that I can tell. So, yeah, there you go. NRA under fire, under heat. No surprise. It's good that this part of it, I think, is settled. I think the whole investigation into them, by the state, as far as looking into their financial records and all that stuff, I think it's a witch hunt, frankly. In other words, I think there's probably better places and things to be looking and things to do for the state to be looking into as far as entities or businesses within their own state. Does the NRA have problems financially speaking as far as, spending money on things that I think are probably a bit of a stretch? Is it an organization that has got a lot of conflict both inside and outside the organization? Yeah, it does. But the fact that the state of New York is essentially trying to find a way they can justify shutting down the organization, I think is an absolute witch hunt.
Yeah, and before, I think it's easy to jump on and say, regardless of what you think about the NRA as an organization, I think the fact that New York is not allowing, I think it's a disservice to those people who want to have some sort of protection if they do have some self-defense issue, right? And so I think it's tough for those living there. So I guess
All right, let's go on now to another story. This one's according to bearingarms.com, and the title is SCOTUS, or the Supreme Court of the United States, turns away 1-2A case, and another case is held in conference. I don't know how much you had time-wise to review this story, Matthew, but I'll give you kind of a quick rundown. But basically, we're at a place right now where the Supreme Court is probably the strongest it's been in a long, long, long time in terms of the members on the court and what we believe are their opinions or their viewpoint or their the way they interpret or believe that the Constitution should be interpreted on such matters such as the Second Amendment. And so it's I think everybody's really interested and curious in seeing how this new Supreme Court makeup, with the addition of Amy Coney Barrett replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court, and seeing kind of how, what is the makeup of the court now? Like, what is this going to look like going forward? The answer is it's a little bit early to tell. Okay. Justice Barrett's barely been on there for a couple of weeks. But what we know is that very recently they heard or a case was brought to the court that they have elected to not take up yet. And in fact, they're basically putting it on hold, if you will, because, and the reason for it, and this is a case, by the way, this one's near and dear to my heart, because this one is a case out of Colorado, right? We have our 15 round capacity limit law that was put into effect in 2013. A horrible law, also one that's woefully unenforceable as far as laws go. And you have a case called Caldera versus City of Boulder, which I'm pretty certain that is John Caldera, who is a local, kind of a local news or media celebrity, if you will, very conservative. He's had a talk show host, or he's had a talk show and different things on local AM radio and stuff like that. And John Caldera has sued the City of Boulder, and this has worked its way up. And the fact is, this case is still in process in the state Supreme Court. So the federal court in the federal Supreme Court is basically saying, we're going to wait till this is resolved at the state Supreme Court level, and then maybe we'll take up this case. So this was not we're not interested in the case. This was more of a procedural, hey, this is going on, and that should probably be resolved before we do our thing. And that's probably a fair way of approaching it, because it's certainly, it's a waste of federal Supreme Court resources for them to spend a lot of time on this case if, for whatever reason, the case is resolved in favor of John Caldera. Okay, meaning that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about hopefully a resolution that bans these magazine capacity limits, and so we'll have to just see how this goes, because if the state Supreme Court issues its own ruling and overturns the law, then there's no point in the federal court taking it up, unless it was then appealed up higher from the other side, from the City of Boulder side. So the other case is another one out of, I think, was this one out of California? I feel like it was out of California. I thought I read this somewhere. Coniglia versus Strom. And this is a case. Oh, excuse me. This was Rhode Island. I'm getting that one confused with something else. So in Rhode Island, you had a husband and wife. I believe they're split up now. Husband and wife of 22 years. They got in a big argument, and things were not good. And the husband slammed down an unloaded pistol on the table in front of his wife and said, "Why don't you just shoot me and get me out of my misery?" So, not the best move. Okay, like that's never a good play. Even if the gun's unloaded, and even if you aren't actually serious about it, or your spouse or whatever is not going to take you up on that, like that's a dumb thing to do. So what happens? She leaves the house. She calls the police, says she's concerned about her husband. And so police go over, and they're like, "Look, here's the deal, man. That's pretty extreme. We're going to take you to the hospital for a mental evaluation." And tell you, and of course, the husband put up a bit of a fight to that. He didn't want to. He's like, "I'm fine. I'm cool. Everything's good." And basically the police say, hey, here's the deal. If you will go with us voluntarily to the hospital, and provided the hospital, releases you with a clean slate of health, mental health as well, then we're not going to confiscate your guns. Okay. So if the hospital says you're good, then we're good, and we'll just let this drop. Instead, he did go to the hospital with the police willingly. He voluntarily went. The hospital evaluated him, found him to be in good health, mentally and physically, released him on his own cognizance. He goes home, finds out the cops did, in fact, actually seize his guns, which they were not supposed to. And they did that without a warrant. And so that, and by the way, if you're thinking, well, maybe this was a red flag thing, this actually is a case dating back to 2015, which is really pre red flag law, or at least, I don't believe Rhode Island had anything like that at that time. And many states did not have anything. Like a red flag law 5 years ago. A few did, but not many. It's been more of a thing in the last couple of years. So anyway, this is more of a Fourth Amendment case rather than the Second Amendment one. Obviously, Second Amendment's involved, but basically the court tabled it for now and said that they're gonna take another look at this case on Friday, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So that's the Coniglia versus Strom case.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty. If you think about it, I mean, we're talking about suicides, and it's a huge problem, right? I mean, we have to be honest. A lot of people commit suicide with firearms, right? And so I think this is one of those areas where it shows that the inclination of any government entity, whether it be the officers on scene or the hospital staff or whatever, the inclination somewhere is going to be to err on the side of caution, right? And this is what the concern is with red flag laws, is that given one of these like iffy scenarios, like, hey, this guy is an actual, immediate threat to himself. Sure, he said it, but he had the firearm there. If he was an actual, probably actually going to commit suicide with the firearm, he had it in his hand, he could have committed suicide. He's probably just blown off steam in a really, not a very healthy way. And somebody's going to say, I bet either the officers said this to, ease him, to calm him down, or the officers did that. And then a supervisor came back and said, look, dude, we're not going to be the ones that have this guy get kicked from the hospital, come back and kill himself. And that looks bad on us. So we're going to seize the guns. And if he wants to sue us for violation of his Fourth Amendment, so be it. But we'd rather have that happen than have a dead dude that it's, the implication is we could have stopped it. And so this is the concern that I always have with judges who are looking at, an ex parte hearing where somebody's not there to defend themselves, and they say, yeah, I don't know, I don't have this guy's story, I don't really need it to make this decision, but I'm going to err on the side of caution and say, go get the guns. And then it starts this process. So it's kind of a difficult situation, but hopefully it gets remedied somehow.
Yep. We'll see. We'll see if the Supreme Court decides to take that case up or not. Yeah. But that is an important one, I think, in establishing and reaffirming the Fourth Amendment and the relationship there to the Second Amendment. That's a very, very important thing, because it's not cool this dude's guns were taken. There's no warrant in place. Again, he was found to be mentally competent and in good health. So, yeah. All right, going on now to an article from thegunfeed.com. This one is titled NSSF. Here's the numbers. U.S. has 434 million guns, 20 million ARs, and 150 million standard capacity magazines. And by that, they really mean, there's 150 million magazines,
right?
The type that we ought to have, ones that should come factory or from the factory. Yep. So just some interesting numbers here. So it says right off the bat that there's nearly 20 million modern sporting rifles in circulation. All right. Approximately 71.2 million pistol magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds, and 79.2 million rifle magazines capable of holding 30 or more rounds in circulation. That's actually really fascinating to me. We have 20 million AR-15s, essentially, modern sporting rifles. We have 434 million total guns, but only 150 or so million magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. And who's to say that these numbers are exact, but these are, if anything, I think the numbers are probably bigger than they are.
Oh yeah.
And so these are still very impressive numbers. Says in 2018, 11.4 million total firearms were produced or imported. Now let's put that in context. So in 2018, 11 million, a little more than 11 million guns were made in 2018. Just a moment ago, we covered a story about how in the month of October of this year, there were 1.9 million guns sold. And let's be clear on that. A lot of times that number comes from background checks. Okay. And the thing is a lot of times people, there's always the possibility that someone buys more than one gun in one transaction, and one transaction equals one background check, right? So it can actually be a higher number than that. But let's put it in context. Let's just assume 1.9 million guns were sold last month, and in total, only 11.4 million were made in all of 2018. Does that put it in context? Like, because at the current, like, if you assume now, granted, not all of the 1.9 million guns sold last month are new manufacturer, but just put it in context that, you know, if you make 11.4 million firearms in a year, industry wide, you only selling about 900,000 a month is going to completely sell out that inventory, you know, over a year's time. So yeah, point is, that's why we're seeing ammunition shortages. It's also why we're seeing some shortages in certain firearms, right? Especially the AR-15 style, and certain pistols as well. I noticed that if you're patient, you can generally find most of what you're looking for, pistol or excuse me, firearm wise. It's the ammunition, of course, that's really, really scarce right now. It says approximately one half, and this is a big number too. So it says approximately one half, or about 48% of all rifles produced and imported, less exports in 2018, were modern sporting rifles or AR style rifles. So about one half of all rifles produced were essentially AR-15 style. Mm-hmm. That's impressive. I could go into, there's more numbers here, but point is, lots of guns in America. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, the statistics are pretty mind-boggling. It's talking about an estimated 8.7 billion rounds of all calibers and gauges. I mean, it's crazy that the sheer number. But I guess what I would say is, if you're looking at this is the guns that we know, right? Like you've hit on that. But so when somebody says we're going to go and get these guns, like, okay, you have 20 million ARs that you know, plus, you know, all the other ARs out there. It's just insane. Like it's impossible. And so, I mean, I'm not saying the drive or the desire to take them is not there, and these guns will be taken from the low-hanging fruit, right? Like the gun owners that they want to, you know, okay, just turn in your guns, or, oh, you have it registered, we can go get these are the ones that they're going to get. But you can't get 20 million ARs plus all the other ones back. So it's crazy. The numbers are just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it even says here that it's a record-breaking number, 17.2 million background checks in the first 10 months of 2020. So that's a lot. And again, keep in mind that that's just background checks, and there are many of those 17.2 million that have multiple guns included as part of that transaction. So yeah, Jared here comments that you could assume that almost twice as many firearms are going to be sold this year as were produced in 2018. That's probably not far from the truth.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Remarkable times we are in, whether for good or bad. I mean, it's good that guns are getting in the hands of the people that, you know, deserve to have those guns in particular. Yeah, and a lot of new gun owners, first-time gun owners, right, and all kinds of demographics. You know, we've talked about that before, about some of the strongest and fastest growing demographics of gun owners are your minorities and women. And that is a positive thing, right? You know, I don't mean to get too political, but, you know, just looking at some of the voting statistics for the 2020 election, and you look at there's all there is, of course, it's a mix, and it's a bit of a wash across the board as you look at the various demographics of people that voted for Trump. But Trump got more votes from the African American population than pretty much any Republican president has had in a long, long time. And there's a part of me that wonders, if some of that is like there's a lot more newer and newly discovering gun owners out there that, it makes me wonder, are they going, hey, wait, I just joined the gun owning ranks this year. I'm just getting into this. I'm just learning. I'm just practicing. I'm just training. I'm just doing this for the first time in my life. And then maybe for the first time in their life, they're also beginning to think about their ballots from a Second Amendment perspective that maybe they haven't in the past because they weren't gun owners before. I don't know. I'm speculating there, but it's something interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think if Trump did anything, he kind of broke the system that's in place, right? As far as these people vote for this group and these people vote for that group, and that's just how it goes. And I think that he exposed that and said, "Hey, look, like vote for who you want, and I'm going to tell you what I want, and you might not like it, but you vote for me or you don't, right?" Like, so I think people are starting to say, "Look, I'm not going to be told what is important in my life when I can see what's important to me, and I'm going to vote for those things." So I think guns did definitely play a role, but we'll have to see.
Yeah. All righty. Awesome stuff. Let's go to Omaha, Nebraska. This story is titled "Guard is Fired After His Gun Goes Off in an Elevator of an Omaha Business." I'll give you the short story, and then I'll turn over to you, Matthew. You give some of the details. Basically, this is like in the afternoon one day, and in an office building. It's actually at the corporate offices of Methodist Health Systems. And again, this is in Omaha, Nebraska. And there's actually talks about a witness who recalls hearing a loud sound that sounded like a gunshot, a muffled gunshot. And turns out that there was a security guard in an elevator that discharged his weapon unintentionally, and it went into the doors of the elevator and very nearly penetrated through the other side. It actually penetrated the inner portion. Most elevator doors are metal, right? It managed to penetrate all the way through to the back from the guard's perspective, went all the way through that door till that last layer of steel and like pushed it outward, but stopped at that point. The guard then quickly exited and left the building, apparently not telling anybody about this, but of course it was all found out. And there's quite a story that goes along with this. So Matthew, give us the juice.
Yeah, so like Riley dropped this in the outline like 5 minutes before we come in, and I start reading it, and I'm like, it fired me up like instantaneously, because basically, if you listen to the podcast and all our what not to do's and like all our we do a lot of I don't know, topics where we talk about training and holsters and safety and whatnot, and this hit like every single thing. If I was thinking in my mind a situation where I could pinpoint like 70,000 things that could have been changed in this and stop this from happening. So a couple things I just wanted to like bring out is he says, let me see. It says the guard told police his holster was too far back on his belt, digging into his side and pulling his pants down. He said he tried to remove the gun from the holster in the elevator to decrease the weight of the belt. He told the officer that his finger must have, I would say it was, not must have, been on the trigger when he pulled out the gun. The guard said, listen to this, he usually doesn't keep a round chambered and was surprised when it went off. All right, so like that whole little paragraph tells me so much about this dude's frame of mind, his desire to actually put any sort of thought into carrying a firearm, right? Obviously no level of training or desire, because you can tell sometimes, we talk to people and we say, hey, that's not a great holster, right? Or you really should get a good gun belt. And they're like, I don't need a gun belt. I got this holster and I've been using this holster and it's worked fine for, but here's the thing. This dude doesn't have a good belt. Why? Because a M&P 9mm handgun pulls his pants down. So anybody with a decent belt, right, that's not going to happen. It's not going to be an issue. If you have a holster that you've worn or done any sort of training with, you're going to know where to position it on your body when you're moving around so it doesn't dig in your hip and you don't have to go through all this rigmarole, right? And in a holster that is proper shouldn't be moving around on your belt or anything anyways, right? And so this dude's mentality is, I'm not going to carry around in the chamber because I'm going to have a gun and that's going to keep me safe. And if I need to do it, I'll chamber around, I'll have time or whatever. And I just want to keep the gun safe. But when you don't train and you don't get into a system or a procedure where that gun is always treated as if it was loaded, then you may not know when you're carrying with a round in the chamber or when you're not. And this dude cranks off a round and doesn't think a round is in it. So there's just so many little things that you see, and it all points to a frame of mind that is not a serious, responsible or thought out methodology of carrying a firearm. And we talk about it all the time about, carrying a firearm is it's not an accessory you throw on. It's a mentality that, you're carrying a lethal tool. And so, it just got me fired up. And so I'll stop picking on this guy, but
You covered it pretty well, but so a couple of things here. Sometimes, for instance, I'll just mention specifically, like the P320 has got a lot of heat in recent years with apparent, spontaneous discharges, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was an initial issue that was legitimate, yes, probably blown out of proportion, but definitely a legitimate issue where, of course, the P320 was well known for having a specific angle and dropping from a certain height and landing on the back of the gun at that angle could potentially discharge that gun. It could actually defeat. And really what was happening is the mass of the trigger and trigger components was heavy enough with that fall to actually move all that to the rear. It wasn't actually defeating necessarily any of the actual safety mechanisms. It was just that it wasn't safe to begin with as far as the mass of the trigger and trigger components. So that was fixed, right? And recently there's been some lawsuits from a couple of cases where people said they had the upgraded P320 and they're claiming that I was on duty, I was doing this thing, I was just removing my gun belt, or I was just getting in my car or out of my car or whatever, and the gun just all of a sudden went off. And I'll tell you, knowing how the new upgraded P320 works, and knowing just how unlikely that is to occur, I'm going to point to this story as an example of things that happen that people then try to attribute to something else. And I know for a fact this happens. This is a clear-cut example of a security guard that knows he messed up and he's afraid to admit it. And only when he is directly questioned by police does he finally admit what happened. And even then he's like, I must have had my finger on the trigger and I did this. Yeah, buddy, you must have, right? And so I'm pretty certain that there's times that we try to blame certain incidents on guns and on the equipment being a failure, and it's probably honestly on us, on the people that are making those claims, whether they realize, because I think it's plausible that somebody could pull a gun out of a holster and without realizing it, because of various circumstances, their finger goes on the trigger before they know it, and the sudden shock of the gun going off kind of erases their brain, if you will, temporarily. Like, oh, how'd that happen? Like, it must have just gone off. Or there's also probably times I think that people are actually lying about what happened because they're so embarrassed and don't want to admit and go on record as saying, I did that, I screwed that, because they know better, right? I know that's a long-winded way of kind of talking about this issue, but this story is a great example of somebody making a mistake, knowing they made a mistake, and being afraid and embarrassed in talking about it, And I'm glad that that finally the story came out, because we can learn from stuff like this. I hope this individual, I know they were fired from their job, and it's probably going to make getting another security job more difficult. And I know there's comments online, even people saying, this dude's an idiot. He shouldn't even be carrying a gun in the first place, and all this stuff. That may be true, but I don't wish ill on anybody, and anybody can learn. And I hope this is the catalyst for this individual to go, I was clearly not prepared and trained well enough to do what I was doing, to carry a gun and to perform my duties in this job capacity. I can do better, and I need to go get more training. And I hope it becomes a positive thing for this man, as opposed to destroying or ruining his life in any way.
Yeah. And you know what? I think this could go speak to a larger, broader topic about, I would assume that there's some sort of training standard for security guards in that state. I don't know, but I'm just assuming, because most states have something like that, right? Like a security guard card or something that you have to meet a certain level of training. And I think this could go to that broader topic of, when you have a standard level of training, what standard is that, and is it adequate? Right? Like, and what are the requirements of recertifying and things like that? And so, this goes into that mandated training for concealed carry licenses, where you have a bunch of different instructors teaching different curriculum that all meets the state guidelines, and people think, oh, well, I got the concealed carry training and it's all the same from any instructor, but one is doing a poor job, right? And the standards aren't even, applicable to carrying a firearm. It's just basic gun safety. And so I think, this goes to a dude that, that a lot of people could fall into this trap of, I got my guard card and therefore I'm good. Like, why would they give me a guard card if I wasn't trained enough? And so we need to keep, it's a conversation for another time, but.
Yep. And that's fair too, that there may very well be, and probably is some shared responsibility upon the security guard companies. And I'll say not all security companies are created equal or have the same level of standards or care that others do. Because I've definitely seen security companies that take things very seriously and train their guys at what I'd say is a pretty good level, pretty on par, and in some cases exceeding standards that are held by many law enforcement agencies. But there's lots of security companies that are just lowest common denominator, lowest, whatever the smallest amount of training that they can get away with, that's what they're going to do, because it's an expense. Mm-hmm. Right. And I get that. And everyone's always trying to reduce expenses and increase their bottom line. But if you're in the security business, you should take it seriously. That's for sure.
Yep.
Final story before we get to our reviews. This is actually just to let you know that a new product has been announced and released. Well, it hasn't actually hit the market just yet. It's not quite yet for sale, but it's something that I am really excited about. I'm actually going to just let this video roll as we talk about this a little bit. But what this is this is the new Enigma from Filster. This is a new holster type, or it's a holster carrying product that is kind of like a cross between a belly band and a more traditional setup, but way better, right? Mm-hmm. Because what you see here is basically a standalone belt system with a mounting plate that's also actually flexible, I might add. It's a special product made by a company called Axle, AXL. And this material, they're actually using it in some other Filster products. I have their Ascent holster pouch, or mag pouch, for instance, that uses the same material. It's very thin and lightweight and flexible, but very strong. And so this flexible plate, if you will, becomes the mounting platform for the holster. And in this way, this is a holster solution that allows you to use a quality holster made from, solid material like Kydex that completely protects and properly retains the firearm, but then is mounted to its own standalone belt system that has all kinds of adjustment and tweaking and customization so that you can make this work with your body. And the reason why for a product like this is, well, it's a holster product or a holster carrying product, if you will. Again, this is the belt system, not the holster itself. You can attach a variety of different holsters to this belt system, but this allows you to wear it with basically any kind of clothing or no clothes at all, even, because it's its own independent gun carrying system.
Yeah, I watched the release of it last night, and yeah, man. I mean, it's super cool because obviously, there's going to be people say, "Hey, I don't want this. It's got, I like the traditional belt, whatever." That's great, but when Filster, I mean, John, the guy who kind of put this thing together, they've been working on this for like what you said, 2 years.
2 years.
And I mean, if you look at all of Filster's products, they're so carefully designed and thoughtfully. I mean, like even this little flexible, I don't know, chassis thing that you want, that the holster mounts to, it's flexible in a certain area and not as flexible in another, in order to create the correct torsion or torque on the gun, so it sits more concealable. And it just, like, all the little things that go into how he designs these things is just amazing. The guy, he's a smart dude. Like, that's all I can say. When it comes to making a holster or carrying a gun, the guy is smart. I'm excited. I can't wait till this thing comes out, and I'd love to try it. So
yeah, I am too. I'm excited. I will be getting one. There's no doubt about that. And we'll probably share my thoughts and review on that on a future news and reviews episode down the road.
Without a doubt.
I mean, this is a true solution that can work for just about any style or method of dress, except for maybe actually wearing a dress, right? If you actually have a one-piece dress not that that's how I dress or anything.
Right.
But anyway.
Sometimes.
Yes, Casey, you're correct. I did say you could wear this with no clothes. The joke that I kind of had or made about this is that I could literally go to bed naked with this thing, wearing it, and jump up in the middle of the night, and I'd have my gun and everything like right there, ready to go.
There you go. There you go.
Don't picture that too much there. I'm sorry for the image, but the point is it's independent of the clothing that you wear. It's a complete system and a method of carrying a gun, and one, as far as I can tell, is probably going to work very well. Relatively inexpensive, I think, for what you get. There's some custom or more custom made solutions out there in the market that are more like, they're quite expensive. This one's going to be about $85 for that belt system. So I know some are still going to think, well, that's quite a bit more than I'm willing to spend for something like that. I'll tell you, based on what I know about carrying a gun and how I like to carry a gun, you don't have to ask the question. I'll drop $85 on that all day long. All right. So speaking of which, gear reviews, we have just a few more minutes before I have a meeting I have to go to. So I'm going to be pretty quick and brief about this, but my review this episode is it's a product that I have to admit that we sell. Okay. But I've been wearing and trying these out for the last couple of months, and wore them to USPSA Nationals and Area 2 Championship, USPSA Championship. But these are the new Ready Up Gear Roger 22 protective earmuffs. And so my review is basically, it's simple and straightforward. Look, these things cost like $45 or something like that. It's what we sell them for on the readyupgear.com website. These are fantastic earmuffs for hearing protection, for shooting, whatever, for that kind of price. They're comfortable. They're very adjustable. The audio quality of them, I think, is quite good. The noise cancellation is excellent as far as, they work the way they're supposed to work as far as amplifying ambient noise until a gunshot is heard. And then they do a very good job of shutting off and minimizing, protecting your ears. You'll see that mine actually has some upgraded, these are not standard, but these are the upgraded, these are the gel ear cups. And these are going to be available very soon as well. So I'm actually giving that away a little bit as far as that's not announced officially, but these gel cups will be available for sale on our website as well. And we'll have gel cups for these Roger 22 earmuffs as well as for some other popular brands if you guys want to buy some gel cups for your other hearing protection as well. These combined with these upgraded gel cups makes these, I think, worth quite a bit more than what you'd actually pay for them. Puts them on par with much higher end, higher quality hearing protection. So yes, you could say this is a biased review because we sell them, we make money from selling them, but I wouldn't sell these if I didn't think that they're worth what you pay for them, and they are definitely worth more than I think what we are selling them for. So very happy with the Ready Up Gear Roger 22 protective earmuffs.
Yes, and as of November 18th, 2020, there's no reason not to have Electronic Ear Pro on the range. I mean, just saying, especially with the prices, it's so much better. I mean, the experience will be so much better for you, especially if you're taking a class. You're not like, hey, what did you say? What's the course of fire? So yeah, good investment.
Yep, you know it. All right, what's your review?
And I didn't pick this before I saw the article about the security guard, but I posted a picture on some social media thing, Instagram, and I was talking about the Core Essentials belt, EDC belt, and it's an awesome belt. It's if it's one of those belts that has like a track system in here. And as you can hear it kind of click like that. So it kind of clicks, it gets its tension that way. So you can get micro adjustments. You don't have to get, poke a hole through to get your belt dialed in just how you want it. Super sturdy. It's rigid. And it holds the belt or the gun really well. They're really cool because you can get different buckles and the buckle comes off and you can switch the buckles, different colors. And if you're into fashion and stuff, different color belts. And they have a leather one that is also, I believe, like an EDC stiffer belt. And then they make, a softer belt. But if you're looking for, a harder type gear belt, and I know, or everyday carry belt, and I know some people don't like a super strong, some of them, some people like a little softer belt. If you like a little firmer and you're looking for something that kind of clicks in a place that's intriguing to you or something that you'd like to try, these belts are really, really good. So yeah, Core Essentials, Kore, not Core, but Kore.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that review with us.
Yeah.
And I don't have a Core Essentials belt, but as John mentions here in the comments, he says it's like Next belt. I do have a Next belt, actually a couple of Next belts that work very similarly. In fact, I could be wrong on this, but I was kind of an impression they might even be owned or part of the same company. I know for sure they're using the same ratcheting mechanism, and it works pretty well, but it's not. So I'll be honest with you. I use my Next belt on when I'm dressing nicer. I have a kind of a dress style belt, and it looks very nice. It's very low profile as far as like you wouldn't guess that it's a gun belt, but it totally is, and works great in that way. Again, I have not played with the Core Essentials belts, and they look quite a bit beefier than the Next belts that I have, and so I have no reason to think that everything you just said isn't true. So awesome. Yeah. Glad to hear it, brother.
Yep. Cool.
Well, it's time for us to let you all go and wrap up another episode of the Concealed Carry Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Again, today's episode brought to you by CCW Safe. Again, go on over to ccwsafe.com. Get signed up today. And also today's episode sponsored by Guardian Nation, guardiannation.com. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, you can sign up for a 14-day free trial at concealedcarry.com/14day, 14DAY. And that'll allow you to try out our membership for 2 weeks with no commitment. And you can make sure you are part of tomorrow evening's Guardian Nation live broadcast from CCW Safe headquarters in Oklahoma City. Jacob and I will both be there. Our special guest is Gary Eastridge of CCW Safe. It's going to be a fantastic evening. So we'll see you, many of you there, as far as there virtually tomorrow evening. And for all the rest of you, until next time, next week, next Wednesday, I expect we'll be back with more podcast content. And until then, a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.